and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf, your host. Well, one of your hosts. There are other hosts. There's Riley Fessler. How are you doing, Riley?
Pretty good.
And there's Minna Stein. How are you doing, Minna?
Excellent, thank you.
Wow. Folks, if you only knew how early in the morning we got up to do this, Minna's incredible level of energy would be deeply annoying for you too. All right.
Fair enough.
Riley, where are you?
Israel launched airstrikes on southern Lebanon following a series of explosions targeting Hezbollah's communication equipment, which have escalated tensions between the two adversaries. The blasts, attributed to Israeli intelligence, involved detonations of Hezbollah radios and booby-trapped pagers, causing significant casualties, including 12 deaths. Concurrently, Israeli authorities claim to have uncovered assassination plots against high-profile Israeli leaders, allegedly orchestrated by Hezbollah. Despite the rising hostilities, there's been no major change in exchanges along the Israel-Lebanon border, though tens of thousands have been displaced already.
Yeah, well, this is still one of those situations where, I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry.
Is there something wrong with your camera? Oh, there we go. Now you're good.
Okay.
It literally looked like the light of God was shining directly on your face and you were like completely washed out. But now it's fixed.
Who's
for
that?
you, David?
Yeah, it's fixed now, but your face was like completely...
It looked like your face was emitting light for the start of that story. All right, now you're good.
Maybe it was.
It's very possible.
Wow. I don't know how that's possible.
Yeah, it was bizarre. I've never seen it before.
I haven't either.
Okay, well, that could have been a miracle, folks. Glad you were here for that. When Moses came down from the mountaintop, they said his face shone.
And you know that because you were there? Or because...
Minna's feeling a little bit too secure in this job.
Wow. Well, she should feel secure. No, it's actually famous, Minna.
Okay.
But because the word for shone was mistranslated back in the day into, it also could mean he had horns emitted from his head. And so when you look at Michelangelo's sculpture of Moses, he has horns because of this misinterpretation of his face being shown. Anyway, you don't care. You want to talk about Godzilla again? We're not doing it. We're going to take this story, which Riley has dutifully reported, and say we just don't know where this is going. We had a very good discussion on this on the podcast yesterday with Kim Gaddis, who's the best person possible to talk to about what's going on in Beirut, and with our friend Mark Polymeropoulos talking about it from the intelligence perspective, Ed Luce, Corey Shockey. And, the big question is what the Israelis are doing escalatory, leading to a war, or alternatively, is it an effort to avoid having an all-out war? It's certainly a big action. It certainly has gotten the world's attention. And it has achieved one of its goals, which is it has distracted people from talking about the fact that the hostages are still in Gaza, that the war in Gaza still goes on, and that Netanyahu has some real problems politically and is trying to fire his defense minister. So we will watch this closely. We do not know where this is going. Minna, how's my face?
Normal. Back to normal.
Okay. That's not good either, but let's go.
Former President Donald Trump leads Vice President Kamala Harris nearly 2-1 among Teamster members, with about 60% supporting Trump compared to 34% for Harris, according to a recent survey. Teamster's General President Sean O'Brien stated that member input is critical for any endorsement decision, emphasizing the importance of reflecting the views of the diverse membership. Despite Trump's strong support, the union decided not to endorse either candidate, making a significant shift from their earlier poll where Biden led Trump. O'Brien has faced criticism from some Democrats for his approach, which has included inviting Trump and other candidates to discussions at union headquarters.
Yeah, it's also included him speaking at the Republican National Convention. In case you missed that, he's a completely biased character. And within minutes of this happening, the Teamsters locals in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, California, and a bunch of other places said, no, we endorse Harris. So, those are the battleground Teamsters. That's where it matters the most. And every other major union has endorsed Harris and Walz. Why? Because one party is actually pro-union, whereas Trump and Vance have both at different times talked about busting unions. In fact, at one point, even the head of the Teamsters, and by the way, when I say one point, I mean a month ago, called what Trump was supporting with regard to unions economic terrorism. So there's more to this story than meets the eye, but there is also less than this story that meets the eye, because the Teamsters in the places that their support is needed will be supporting the Harris-Walz ticket. Riley?
Iranian hackers attempted to interfere in the 2024 U.S. presidential election by sending unsolicited emails to people associated with Joe Biden's campaign, offering stolen information from Donald Trump's campaign. The FBI and other federal agencies have now reported that no recipients responded to the emails, which were regarded as phishing attempts. The hack, part of a broader Iranian effort to undermine voter confidence, targeted both the Trump and Biden campaigns. Despite receiving leaked material, major media outlets did not publish any of it. U.S. officials have been actively addressing foreign interference through indictments, sanctions, and advisories, in contrast to the more restrained response in 2016.
Yeah, well, another dimension of this whole thing was that the Iranians tried to get the Biden campaign to use some of this stolen information against the Trump campaign, and they didn't go for it, which is to their credit. There was a study released yesterday by Microsoft that indicated a number of instances where the Russians were supporting Trump over Harris, and were actually spreading lies about Harris, including, for example, one instance where they spread a story that she was involved in a hit and run accident that left a 13-year-old paralyzed. Completely false. And the expectation is that foreign interference is ratcheting up with 7 weeks to go, or 6 weeks to go. There will be more and more of it. And that means that more and more of the information you see about the campaign on social media and on certain kinds of websites will actually be completely untrue. And this poses a new challenge for voters who are going to have to make their way through that. Minna?
House Republicans recently failed to pass their plan to prevent a government shutdown with a vote of 202 against a 220 in favor, reflecting significant divisions within the party. Speaker Mike Johnson's proposal aimed to extend funding for 6 months while attaching the controversial SAVE Act, but faced opposition from both fiscal conservatives and defense hawks. With only days until the potential shutdown, the focus now shifts to the Senate, where leaders are likely to see a bipartisan, clean, continuing resolution. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell cautioned that a shutdown could be politically damaging for the GOP just weeks before the election.
Yeah, that's very polite language. Mitch McConnell didn't caution. He said it would be political suicide. And what did Donald Trump do? Donald Trump, after having talked to Mike Johnson, put out a tweet yesterday saying, They should definitely shut down the government if they can't get this provision in it that says that only citizens can vote. Only citizens can vote. We've discussed this before. This is not only a redundant provision, but it hides something else. And that is what they're trying to do is make voting more difficult by telling people that they have to bring more different kinds of identification with them. And this is likely to have the biggest impact on poorer voters and other groups that Republicans just don't want to see voting. So this is not a sincere effort. This is not an effort to protect the integrity of the elections. But Harris fans, you can only hope that they follow through with this idiotic move, because as Mitch McConnell said, the nation is watching. They know who's responsible for it. Now there's a tweet out there from Trump saying they should shut down the government. By all means, let's have the Trump-led government shutdown in the final month of the campaign. Would be an absolutely masterstroke. Admittedly, it'd be a masterstroke for the Harris campaign, but if Trump wants to offer that up, let him. What's your last story there, Riley?
The U.S. and allied nations disrupted a Chinese government-run botnet called Flax Typhoon, which had hijacked 260,000 internet-connected devices like cameras and routers to spy on sensitive organizations. The FBI led the operation, severing the infected devices from the botnet, which was managed by Beijing-based Integrity Technology Group. Flax Typhoon targeted critical infrastructure across multiple countries, stealing data and causing significant harm, including financial losses for affected organizations. The cyber espionage operation follows similar attacks, highlighting China's ongoing efforts to breach critical infrastructure globally. Chinese officials have denied the accusations.
Yeah, look, folks, at this point, you have to understand that every major intelligence service is using all the cyber means at its disposal to achieve its objectives. The Chinese are doing it, the Russians are doing it, the Iranians are doing it. Clearly, the Israelis are doing it. And we know from many years ago, the US and our allies are doing it too. Sometimes this has a direct destructive objective. That could be Stuxnet, where they used it to spin up centrifuges to the point that they essentially exploded, or what happened in Lebanon. Sometimes it's spying purpose, where they're using it to gather data. No device is beyond the reach of intelligence services, as Mark Polymeropoulos said yesterday on our podcast. This matters, a great deal. And I have to say, by the way, to give you a sense of, we've been having an ongoing discussion this week about the heavy cultural influences in our life, in which we learn Riley only watches Godzilla movies. But to give you a sense of how twisted mine is, when you said that the Chinese company was called Integrity, I immediately thought of South Park and Integrity Farms, the marijuana farm that is in the middle of the South Park series. But I suppose neither of you guys did. You probably don't even watch South Park. You're much more highbrow, much more highbrow than
I'm a Simpsons man.
Than I am. Oh, that's kind of old school.
It's good. It's good stuff.
The Simpsons are the OG of this stuff. But see how I used OG there, Minna?
It was very hip.
Yeah. OG is kind of like 15 years old too. So I know it wasn't. Speaking of OG, you haven't mentioned Diddy in this whole week.
No,
we have not.
I had to resist the urge.
Yeah, that guy seems to be getting what he deserved. And yesterday, some other rapper came out and said, but he's only doing what everybody else is doing.
Great.
A
Quite the
statement.
self-report.
A, a statement. A statement he may regret making. But it seems pretty hideous, and my guess is that uh, he is going. Sean Combs is going to be in jail for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
He will never be a free man again, because what he did was disgusting. Anyway, that's what we got for today. It's Thursday. Is it a Thursday?
It is.
Yeah, it is.
Oh my God, these weeks go flying by. And so tomorrow is the first day of in-person voting in the United States. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We have another podcast later today on politics. So that seems relevant, what with the election and everything. And if you haven't heard our earlier podcast this week, by all means, go listen. Until then, thank you, Minna. Glad to see you've calmed down a little bit. Riley, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Bye-bye.